My guest today is video game industry veteran John Ricciardi, who I've known for many, many years. I think he came up to me and said, "You just interviewed Shigeru Miyamoto. That was really cool." I think at like E3
Like the first
1996 or the first E3. Yes, it was very cool. But he is the creative director of and co-founder of 8-4, which is based in Tokyo, Japan. They've worked on localizations for some of your favorite games, like some Fire Emblems, a couple of the Niers. Nier Automata was one of the best games last year. Lots of the Monster Hunter series, and we're going to be talking about that, including Monster Hunter 3 and Ultimate, and Monster Hunter 4, and now Monster Hunter World, which is about to be unleashed upon us. He worked at EGM and also the Nintendo official magazine in UK, and he is the co-host of the very famous and very good 8-4 podcast. John Ricciardi, it is wonderful to have you on Electric Playground. Have you ever been on our show before?
I don't think I have. It's great to be here. We've known each other for so long.
You might be the last person in the video
E3.
game. You might be the last person in the video game industry who hasn't been on EP, and now you're here. You're in. You're on.
My time has come. I finally made it. It took so long, but I made it.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me, man. It's great to be on.
We did meet at the very first E3, didn't we?
We did. I just remember my memories of the first E3 are like, the size and spectacle of it all, Polygon Man, and you. It's like that's the things that go back to me. It's like, okay, yeah, those are the like key events that happened to me because I wasn't really in the industry yet. I was like just starting out. I had gone there as like a say that again.
I'm so flattered. That's incredible. That's so sweet.
Yeah, I was out there as like an EB employee, like everybody else used to do. We would go to like the show, and like that was kind of where I first oh wow, this is amazing. And then the next year I joined EGM, and so
that's amazing. Well, I mean, we were still dreaming at E3 95. We didn't have a show on the air. We had our website, and I was just out collecting interviews. That was a crazy thing. Like Michael Jackson was at the Sony party where we got our Polygon Man T-shirts.
That's right.
I ended up turning my hair into Polygon Man, which is weird. And then
nice.
I met George Lucas at the very first E3. I ran after him and gave him my business card. But I met everybody. And what's amazing about this business is that no one leaves it. If a few people do, but if you really love it, you find your way in, and you sort of roll with what comes. And lots of changes happen, and companies close down, and games get canceled, and magazines fold, and all kinds. But you kind of roll, and you find your path in it. And you are one of those people that happened for you a little bit, but you kind of said, "Look, there's a need for this. We need better translated work," because you're a fan and you could tell that this content wasn't quite up to snuff, and you went out there to like solve some things, didn't you?
Yeah, like selfishly, a lot of what that was in the beginning was kind of for me personally as a gamer is like, well, how, this is, what am I going to do in this industry? I'm finally getting out of media. I was in media for like 5-6 years, whatever it was, and it's like tried a couple different things, and it's like, well, I still want to work on games, but I'm not sure like I'm necessarily going to be like a game creator, so maybe I can put my one skill to use, which was writing. And it's like, well, the writing in games is pretty bad in localized games back then, and it was like, well, maybe we can combine the contacts that I made from over the years from being in the media with writing ability and see what we could do. And that's kind of how we got into localization in the beginning.
How much, I mean, you relocated to Tokyo. Had you already been speaking Japanese quite a bit before you did all of that, or did you just sort of say, "I'm going to learn this, let's go"?
Just a little bit. When I was, I've told this story on Twitter and stuff before, but when I was a big Dragon Warrior fan back in the day.
Nice.
Super nerd. And when the 5th one came out, it wasn't in English. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to import it. It's going to be my first game I import from Japan. I bought a couple of like Japanese dictionaries and like taped the like, alphabet stuff to my desk or at home. And I basically like forced myself to learn the hiragana and katakana, like the basic Japanese alphabets. And that was what sort of started the little snowball that led into me becoming interested in Japan, eventually moving here. I came here for just 1 year originally, but now it's been 17. So I've become a lifer over the course of it. And it's mostly because of video games.
That's incredible. So when you went that first time, did you actually come back after a year, or did you just end up staying?
I just ended up staying. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I came out during the, I don't know if some of your older viewers might remember the .com like bubble of 2000, which is basically like all these internet companies sprouted up, and we were working for a site called gamers.com, which was one of those. And part of my deal for leaving like the safe walls of EGM to go to gamers.com was I wanted to go to Japan, and they promised to send me after a year. And so if I helped them build their site. So I did that, and then I left. And then like 2 months after I got to Japan, they and most of the other .coms at the time went belly up. And so I was like, oh, well, I got here. I might as well make the most of it. And so I had to kind of start over from scratch. But I ended up, ended up staying. And yeah, like I said, now it's many, many years later. So
what I've kind of recognized with the Japanese developers that I've interviewed and met over the years is that they are very open to this idea of collaboration, and they obviously want to appeal to more Western gamers and find a way to grow their audience. Did you find that as a young entrepreneur? Was that something that you got back from these game designers and game developers, or did they put you through the ringer a little bit?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, I still remember like the first trips I came out here. So I was coming here 3 or 4 times a year before I moved here for EGM back in the day. Yep. And I still remember like being this like wide-eyed, 20-year-old or whatever, and like sitting at a table. We went to this Konami press event in '97. I'll never forget this. Like sitting at a table, and like the guy right across from me, just super unassuming dude, very humble and quiet. And like for 2 or 3 hours into the conversation, the topic comes up of what he worked on, and he's like, oh yeah, this is the guy who made Contra. And I just remember like my eyes blowing wide, because like, you would think this is some rock to kids like us back in the day. Those Konami games were like insane. Like this was some rock star. No, he's just super humble, very friendly, totally willing to talk and become friends. And that was something that struck me about the Japanese game industry, is like even the biggest creators are mostly super humble and friendly. And we've ended up becoming really good friends with a lot of these guys who were like heroes when we were younger.
That's awesome.
So in that sense, it was easier to kind of don't get me wrong. It's not super easy to start a company in Japan and all that. I have a really great partner, Hiroko, who's Japanese, and she's been a big part of why we've become kind of trusted and stuff in Japan. But like getting started out here, a lot of that was just like building these relationships with these developers and becoming friends with them, and them understanding our enthusiasm and how much we care about games and everything. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of what made it comfortable to work in the industry here. Is the industry's so small and warm and just awesome.
What was the first game that you guys got contracted to help out on at 8.4?
It was actually Mario Tennis for Game Boy Advance.
Amazing. That Nintendo has got to be one of the toughest companies to kind of gain that trust with, I guess, in a way, right? But that's not a bad game to start. That's amazing.
No, it was amazing. And that, of course, that was because of, we had already been friends with all those guys. Bill and who was, one of the main guys at the Treehouse back then, was like, Bill Trinan was a really good friend of ours from our media days. And so, when you've already got the relationship built and the trust, it's much easier to break down the initial barrier of like working together. It's like, well, he actually approached us before we had to, he knew we were setting up the company, but it wasn't set up yet. So it was like, how can we find a way to get you guys to work on this right now, even though your company's not going to be ready for like 3 more months? And we were like, oh my God. So we like had to scramble to get 8.4 up and running, but we did, and it was awesome.
That's great. That is amazing. Yeah. Hey, now you guys have been running for a long time, and I listed off some of the titles that you've worked on. Was there, tell me maybe one of the games that you're proudest of, or a moment in your company's history where you went, oh my God, I can't believe we get to work on this.
That's happened so many times, and I'm so grateful for it. But like, I would say, we get something that's similar to working in the media, as you probably know, is like, when you get the feedback from users or players about, your work, like when we wrote at EGM back in the day, and we would get letters from fans and stuff who read our reviews and were like, everybody had their favorite. And some people would be like, you're the guy whose tastes align with mine the most. I really like you, blah, blah, blah. That's like very empowering. Like it fuels me to want to do more. It's the greatest feeling, like to be able to make, you're a player, a gamer who loves video games, and you want to help other people. And if you can make them feel good, it's like, to me, that's the best thing. And so I noticed you get the same thing with our localizations. Like a lot of times when you do a good localization, nobody really talks about it. Reviewers and stuff will talk more about the bad ones. Yeah. But when you do one that like hits home so much that you're hearing about it in reviews and people are complimenting on you, that's like the greatest thing. And it's not like there's some pride involved, but it's not like, oh, look at us, we're awesome. It's more like, I'm so happy we were able to kind of deliver the developers like intended, response to the players. Like this, when he made this game in Japan, he wanted the player to feel this. And like when we're hearing that from players and their tweets and their emails and stuff like that, that's like the best thing. And we've gotten that on a number of games over the year. The most recent one is Nier Automata from last year, or Automata, depending on how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
And that's that's an amazing game with a deep story. And we've gotten tons of first of all, it's just an honor to be involved with that series. We worked on the original Nier as well. Yoko-san is a good friend of ours, the director. And but that game really resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I feel strongly that like it needed a good localization. Like a game like that with those themes and that kind of depth to the story.
100%.
If the localization fails and the voice acting is no good, it's just gonna rip you right out of it.
Yeah.
So I'm particularly proud of that one. But we also worked on so my former business partner Mark McDonald, also formerly of EGM, was the main writer on Metal Gear Rising. And I think Mark actually coined I'm not going to say it, but our current America's current president's terrible slogan was actually used in that game like a few years before by the evil senator in the last boss. And like we wrote that and like we worked on that and got a lot of good feedback from that game. And of course, the Monster Hunter games are also like we helped kind of revitalize the localizations in that series, starting from Try. And so,
awesome.
Yeah, there's been a number of games that were particularly exciting to work on, but
fantastic.
It never stops getting exciting.
So I wanted to talk about Monster Hunter. Obviously, it's a big topic this week. Monster Hunter World is a big deal. Yes. I've followed this series along. I can't profess to be a super fan of the franchise. I think mostly because I don't have the time to be. I can, give my thoughts about these games and play them until I know what I feel about them, but they require a commitment. But I feel like World, from my observations, could be a change, could be one of those games that appeals to even the broadest audience that Monster Hunter ever has. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was kind of the hope. So the hope has always been for Monster Hunter fans like myself who've been with the series forever, has always been, I think, for it to be on a platform that, I mean, it's great that it was on 3DS and they finally added online with the last couple of entries. But I mean, we've talked about it on our podcast for years. We've really wanted it to be like on a next gen console on your big screen. It's you're fighting these huge monsters all the time. It's such a spectacle, like to play this game. Like you want to see it on a giant screen, not on your tiny handheld.
Yeah.
And so for it to finally go, quote unquote, next gen and to be kind of, they've evolved the series to a degree now, I feel like, where they're trying to make it more user-friendly for newcomers. It's still, the barrier to entry is still pretty high, I feel like. It's definitely improved in this one, but it's not going to be a game that anybody can pick up and play. This is a hardcore game, for sure. But I do think that this is probably the best shot they've taken yet at getting it into like a wider audience, for sure.
One thing I've noticed right away that struck me, because one of the things that, I mean, we've been educated with games like Skyrim and now Breath of the Wild and stuff like that to kind of get familiar with huge, vast areas that are kind of open world and stretch everywhere. When you play a Monster Hunter game, it hints at that, but in the previous ones, there were lots of loading bits between areas. And in this one, that's all seamless. And that makes, for me, as someone that knows a little about Monster Hunter, but not all of the minutia, that seems to correlate a lot more with the other types of open world action experiences and RPG experiences that I'm playing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they call it World for a reason, right? I think one of the big things they did here was they did, I've been playing, if there's a reason I'm bleary-eyed, it's because I was up till 3 a.m. last night playing again. We've been playing all week. We got early copies. And, they basically removed the loading between scenes. So now you have a little bit of loading, like a little more loading before each quest. But then once you're in and moving about. There's fast travel between different camps on the quest. They've made it much more, feel much more like a giant world. It always was a giant world, but as you said, like because of the loading and things, it didn't feel that way. And so in that sense, it definitely feels more like sprawling and gigantic and kind of alive. And that's something that was always, I think, one of the strong points of the series is like feeling like you're lost in this giant, ancient world or whatever, and they've done a good job of capturing that with World.
Awesome. And I would imagine the core ideas of harvesting the materials that are out there and, hunting these monsters and taking out the, the bits that you can use and the bits that you can cook. A lot of the core hooks are all the same.
They're all the same, but they're streamlined in a good way, mostly.
Yeah.
That this is one of the best things about this that they've done is they've made gathering much easier. Like in the previous games, you'd have to go to like a gathering point and, hit the button. Okay, pause animation. Hit the button again. Pause animation. It's kind of this process, and it took a lot of time. And now, as you're running through the world, stuff will just pop up, and you'll just tap the O button while you're running. You don't even stop, and you just grab it. Oh. And mining no longer is this complicated thing where you have to like manage your pickaxe inventory and stuff. Like you have infinite pickaxes. You just go to up a mining spot, hit it a few times, you've got your stuff, you go.
Wow.
They've made the sort of the moment to moment stuff that was taking forever in the previous games is all much more streamlined now.
Is that
which is good because that's not.
Is that based on feedback? Is that based on, because this has had a long, success story for Capcom. But is this based on people saying, "Look, we want to get into it," or is this the team saying it's time to modernize this for a different crowd, or a bit of both?
I would imagine it's probably more of the latter. I should say, like, even though we did actually work on the localization of this game too in partnership with Capcom, but I don't speak for the team, so I don't know exactly what they were thinking on this stuff. But I do feel like, the impression that I've gotten from this game from the start is, hey, we want to make a Monster Hunter that's going to appeal worldwide, not just in Japan. Japan has already got it. Japan loves it.
Yep.
And that's fine. But we wanted to make a game. They wanted to make a game that is going to appeal outside. And so I think a lot of the streamlining, part of it is just, hey, games have become more modern and streamlined over the years. There's that. But then part of it is also like, hey, how do we make this more accessible to a wider audience? How do we, a lot of people would play Monster Hunter and then get tired of it or give up on it very quickly because like, oh, this is just too much information, too much going on. So I think it's a matter of like, how do we remove those little things that aren't, it's not a big deal if you're just tapping a button to gather instead of like standing there for a minute. So like, how do we remove these things and make it easier for players to play without getting turned away right away?
Yeah.
And you feel that a lot in the game.
How did that change your job at 8.4? Was the information also streamlined? I mean, it must be. Is it bigger? Is the game bigger than it sounds like it's bigger?
I mean, it feels bigger. It seems, it's hard to say. Like, I couldn't say how long it was or anything, but I mean, it feels like a proper Monster Hunter for sure.
Yeah.
The difference for us, I think, is that, and this has been happening in a lot of games we work on, is that, this is the first time that it's coming out in the same release date worldwide. So
that's
Japan
huge.
And the West, everyone's getting it at the same time, which means the localization people, both us and at Capcom have to work on stuff a lot earlier. Like the perfect localization scenario, the game is done, they hand it to you on a platter, and you're like, okay, leave us in a room for a couple of months and we're going to come back with this like perfect, dish. But in this case, it's like, okay, we've barely got the ingredients and started cooking and you got to start working on the game already. And it's like, okay, I don't even know what's going on. Like, it's a lot more of a challenge in that sense to like, polish things because you don't always know how things are going to go, or you might, those guys did some really great voice recording for this game over at Capcom, but like, who knows? Like, they were working on it and things could change after voices have been recorded, and then it's like, do you go back and re-record them? Do you do, a lot of kind of like being able to react and move quickly while working on the game, which is different from the past. And that was kind of the major, I think, interesting challenge of working on this game.
These games are cool and they're fun. And I'm wondering if, based on your experience now, being so close to this, is this the one that you say, if you've had any interest or this has piqued your curiosity, this is the one to jump in with?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of always like that because they're always making it a little more accessible. But this time, we're playing it now a lot. Like, we first got involved with the series on Monster Hunter Tri, and we've jokingly talked about the story about how we would work on the game like 12-hour days. It was a crazy schedule, and then we would go home and play the game to relieve stress. They're like, we're gonna go play, like it's like weird self-punishment. The couple of entries after that, of course we played them all a lot, but we didn't get as crazy into it. It's like, okay, well, we've kind of done this before, we've played it, we worked on it, we already know how it ends, like, so blah blah. But with this one, it's back to like crazy excitement. Like we've got, our chat room on our phone, and it's like, okay, what time are we meeting up tonight? And we're going to play, and we're all, I bought a new headset just so I can, do better voice chat without that, thing that comes with the PS4 in my ear. And like, we're into it now. And I think that's a sign. Like we're not just doing this because we have to, we're doing it because we really want to.
Why did Monster Hunter make such a huge dent in Japan? Why was it such a huge hit?
It was a social phenomenon here, I think, partly because it got big on the PSP, and big part of that is we have this interesting level of social gaming here that kicked off that never really happened in the West, I think, partly because of Japan's size, contracted, like it's a small country. School students gather together and play together outside in person a lot, and what happened is, I think, it became like the social thing where like everybody gathered together with their PSPs afterwards and played together. And it's like couch co-op or anything. It's much more fun when you're in the same room as your friends playing together and hunting, and you can coordinate without having to like chat on text or whatever. And at that time, the mobile games are everything in Japan now.
Yeah.
They're obviously a huge market here. And it was like right before that. So it was like, that was like the boom that preceded the mobile boom. But it was kind of the same thing. The reason for it is portability, right? Like, not to get too far into it, but like Japanese, especially in big cities like Tokyo, we don't have huge apartments. Yeah. Like my apartment here is probably like the size of your living room or something. And it's like, people are outside more than they're inside. And so that's why portable gaming and mobile gaming is a bigger deal. A lot of commuting, a lot of being on trains. And so I think that also helped feed into the Monster Hunter frenzy. It's like, here's this fun co-op game that we can play together anytime, doesn't cost anything. We can meet outside and be social. We're not being antisocial like in our homes or whatever. And like that was sort of what made it a huge thing here.
That's awesome. Is it weird then to play Monster Hunter World on your huge TV? And does it feel like you're part of the whole thing, or does it feel like you're entering a new game in a way?
Well, I'm still, I mean, as much as I love Japanese games, I think I'm still, in that sense, I'm wired to be like a Western gamer at heart. Like I love playing online. And so for me, this is great. Like it's awesome to be able to go home and, get on chat. We have our, like I said, we have like we'll be on Discord or we'll be on our PlayStation party or whatever. And like, we're all just basically playing online games the way anybody would, the way you'd play Destiny or whatever. To me, it's great. Like that's what I always wanted. It's nice to be in the same room, but I don't need to be. So
that's awesome. So when you work on a game like Monster Hunter, are you strictly focused on converting the Japanese to English, or is there anything going back the other way? Do you do you work with other people that are bringing a game from North America into Japan as well, or can you go back and forth that way?
We do other games from English into Japanese. Yeah, like we're the ones who do like all the Japanese versions of like Supercell's games, so like Clash of Clans and Clash Royale and all those. Or we bring some indie games to Japan. We did like Shovel Knight in Japan, and we did Undertale. Wow. That was like a big thing last year. But that's like we wouldn't on Monster Hunter, for example, it's all coming from Japan to English. We don't really do anything the other way around because there's nothing to do. Yeah, but we do other games in that sense. Yeah. And
are you guys? I mean, you're clearly avid players, and you're sort of in touch with all kinds of stuff, and you've got a history, critiquing these things. Have you encountered any situations where you've given feedback and altered some game design choices or anything like that?
Yeah, when the developers are open to it, we love to, get our comments in. I mean, we try to be, we understand the realities of game development, so we're not like, hey, let us remake your game or whatever. But a lot of times there are little things you can do to enhance the experience for, I was going to say Western gamers, but I shouldn't say that. I mean, it's enhancing it for anyone, really. But like in our case, a lot of times we're bringing these Japanese games to America, and it's like, there are a couple of times where we were able to, I remember one game in particular, I think it was a game not many people played, Glory or Heracles for the DS, I think it was, from Nintendo. The battles were really slow in the Japanese version, and we talked to the dev team, and we're like, if you could speed these up, like times it by 3 or something, make the speed like 3 times as fast as Japanese, it's going to make the game a lot more playable. And they actually were like, you know what, you're right, and they did it. And like stuff like that is when we have a chance to do that, it's really awesome.
That's amazing.
But it depends on the development team, you know, being willing to listen, having the time. Sometimes they don't have the time or the budget, and that's just the reality, and that's fine. But
yeah. You've been in this business for a long time now. How much have you seen sort of change? And you've been in Tokyo now for a long time too. How much have you seen the gaming industry change out there?
I think it's in a good place now. Actually, this last year was incredible. Like there were so many great games from Japan.
Absolutely.
We had Yakuza and Persona and Nier and all this awesome stuff coming out, Zelda, and everybody's kind of firing on all cylinders. And like there was that dark age for a little while where, you know, like Inafune-san and some of the other people were like preaching doom and gloom for Japan. But yeah. I always felt that it was going to, you know, I never felt like Japan creativity was dead. I just felt like there was a lack of like technology understanding for a while that kind of hurt, but I feel like they've kind of caught back up, either on their own or with the with the help of like game engines like Unreal and such. A lot of people are using Unreal these days in Japan.
Yeah.
I feel like the industry in here, you know, in Japan was like really high. That's why we all were like, excited about Japanese games back in the day. It sort of dipped down for a while in like the PS3 era, but I feel like it's back now, and we're maybe in like the most exciting time ever.
We're also seeing, you know, like these superstar Japanese developers like Koji Igarashi going out there and kickstarting stuff and getting their own ideas, you know, and
yeah.
They're also using kind of retro styles and things that have supposedly passed us by, but I feel like there's an appetite and there's an understanding of the the total reach of games. They don't necessarily all have to be AAA Unreal titles these days.
Yeah, man, the whole indie boom that happened over the last 5-6 years or whatever it's been has been, I think, really great for the industry in general because of that. Like, it's brought back lots of different kinds of genres. A lot of people who grew up playing those games when they were kids are now adults making their own games. So it makes sense that we're going to go back and start seeing more of those kind of games in the stuff that people make today. And a lot of those kids were inspired by Japanese games, right?
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of indie games that are trying new things. New things based on like old ideas, which is great. And also, I think, Japanese developers have for years were making those kind of games. So, I mean, play to your strengths. If you're, I don't want a Japanese developer necessarily to make some like, first person like bro shooter or whatever, because that's not what they were good at. Like I love that Iga's making a game basically similar to a series that he was super famous for. Like, definitely fill that gap. Like, we want those kind of games.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have, you're part of a group of friends that puts on a special night out there for game developers, right? What's it called? Otaku Nights?
Otaru, yeah.
Otaku. How often do you have those?
We have it once a week, actually. Otaru is a thing that we've been doing since 2003 now.
Yeah.
Every week we basically just meet up at the same kind of rundown little izakaya, like this little Japanese, watering hole, I guess you'd call it. And we just, drink and eat and hang out with other people who either work in games or enjoy games. Yeah. It's kind of a community building thing that we started a while ago.
Who shows up to something like Otaru?
I mean, we have different people. That's the nice thing. We were talking about this a little bit offline earlier, but like, the nice thing about being in Tokyo is people come through all the time from, to visit. A lot of game industry friends will pass through Tokyo because it makes sense that a lot of people are interested in Japan if they're in games. And we get game developers there all the time. I mean, back in the day, it was like, Mark Cerny would be there one week, or, just a couple of weeks ago, Ian Dallas was there, the guy who made Edith Finch, and David O'Reilly, the creator of everything, was in town a couple of weeks ago. Like, it's different people every week, but there's always somebody coming through. There's our local group and the regulars or whatever. And then there's always like special guests flying through, as we call them, who are, industry people. And it's great because we get to kind of, we get to build a community in Tokyo of game developers and people who want to become game developers, but then they also get to kind of mingle with the people who are actually making the games as well. And to me, that's everything. I love that. That's like, it's something we just do on the side for fun. There's no money involved or anything, but it's just something that like kind of we can use to kind of fuel our love of games.
That's awesome. Now, you have been privileged to work with some of your heroes in Japan. and some real industry legends. And I'm wondering if there's someone that you feel comfortable enough to tell us a story of somebody that really surprised you, that you got to know. Maybe it's Mr. Miyamoto or Hideo Kojima or Suda51, or that you got to know them and they surprised you about in some way.
Well, I don't. That is good. You ask good questions. You caught me off guard here. I don't. Everybody surprises me in the sense that I'm just this. I'm like 42 now, but I'm still this like wide-eyed 18-year-old in my head. Like I love video games the same way I did 20 years ago. And so, like I was saying earlier, every time I meet one of these like industry heroes of mine, it's always like just this amazing experience, and I always just want to do my best to make them feel comfortable and not feel like I'm some fanboy freaking out over them. But I've Eiji Aonuma, the producer of Zelda, we met him back at a Ziff Davis party at E3 in like a long time ago. Bill Trinian brought him to one of our EGM parties back in the day, and of course we're like, oh, it's a Zelda producer, we want to meet him. But I remember chatting with him there. This is like 12, 13 years ago or something, and being like, hey, like, I loved Majora's Mask. It was awesome. Like, we talked about it. And he was like, oh, really? Like, at the time, he was so shocked that people loved that game because he loved it too.
Yeah.
And we became friends over that. And we've been friends for years. And, like, we'll see him now whenever we go to Kyoto. Like, sometimes we'll go drinking together or hang out together. And, like, to me, those kind of moments are so special that these people who, like, I admire so much are just our friends and are just super humble and want to hang with us. And like, I don't have like some surprising, crazy story like about any of these guys. Not that they would want me to tell you anyway, but I mean, like, I feel like, it's just so great to be in an industry here where I feel like, even the most esteemed creators are super down to earth and just want to make cool games. It's awesome. Great.
I know that some of the viewers, at least one or two of you out there, are going to be thinking about a crazy dream like yours, about moving to a different country. What would you say to those people that have a dream to do something like that? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Like, the best thing that I could ever say to anyone, games or otherwise, is like, get out of your comfort zone. Like, go live in another country for a year or two and see what the world is like. See what your own home is like from the eyes of other people. Like, just, I'm super, super lucky to have lived the life that I've lived so far. I mean, hopefully I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, but I mean, like, it's super, I highly recommend getting out of your comfort zone and go try new things. A lot of the advice that I give people is like it's the cliched stuff that everybody says, which is like, work hard, don't give up on your dreams, blah, blah, blah. But it's all true. Like, I didn't, and a little bit of luck is involved too. So you got to get yourself out there. Like, yeah. I got in this industry from going to CES in, like, I forget which one it was. It was like 95 or something. It was before that E3 where I met you. Mm-hmm. And I like remember I like wore a suit. I didn't know what I was doing, and like just went and like had like
Dude,
writing
I wore
samples.
A tie to the first E3. I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and like I've worn a suit like maybe 20 times in my life, but that was one of them. And I went there, and I remember I brought like writing. I wrote some reviews or something. I forget. I basically wanted at the time I wanted to write a book. I just wanted to get into games, and I brought writing samples, and I hunted down Wes Nihei, who at the time was the editor-in-chief of GamePro.
Yeah.
Somehow he was willing to talk to me. I forget why, but basically, like, I just like was like, look, dude, like, I just anything. And he gave me a freelance review like 6 months later, and like that little thing managed that from there I could then take that and say, hey, I have a little bit of experience. Can I do some work for you? Can I do this? Can I do that? And that slowly got me in. But like, it wouldn't have happened if I didn't take whatever little money I had and like go to, was it Vegas or Chicago? I forget which one of those CES shows. So you got to get out there. You're not the luck. It's not going to fall on you. You have to actually work for it and try to make it happen. But if you actually try to make it happen and you work hard, I feel like you can do it.
Awesome.
And living in another country, man, especially Japan. If you're into games, Japan's awesome. It's really fun here. Food is amazing, and service is amazing, and people are so nice.
People are
incredible
I love it here. Out there. Yeah, God, you're making me want to go back so bad. So what's next? You've got Monster Hunter World. It's shipping this week. I know you're cooking on new things. Can you tell us, an 8.4 project that's in the works?
What are we working on now? We're always working on a lot of
perhaps.
Stuff. No, I wish. Nothing exciting that we could talk about now, but our projects come in for us, we're constantly working on stuff, but they tend to hit the public in like fits and spurts. Like all of a sudden, like 3 games we worked on over the course of like 2 years will all land in like within 6 weeks or something. And so right now we're in one of those quiet zones where we're doing a lot of stuff, but I think you'll start hearing from us again probably, you know, later this year, early next. Because we've been doing a lot of stuff into Japanese lately.
Yep.
And so like we put out Undertale in Japan, and we actually developed the PS4 and Vita versions of that, which were released everywhere. And that took up a lot of last year. And now we're working on a couple of big projects, but I think you won't even start to hear about them until later this year, probably. So
awesome.
things might be a little quiet for a little while, but we'll be back with some cool stuff soon.
Well, I hope you'll be back on EP soon, too. This was wonderful and long overdue, and it was great to see your smiling face on here. I'm so proud of you. You are a trailblazer.
Thanks,
and it's you're just a wonderful dude, man. So I'm really, really happy. Can you do me a favor? Can you say, this is John Ricciardi from 8-4, and you're watching Electric Playground in Japanese?
日本の皆さん、8の4のジョンと申します。こちらは Electric Playground という素晴らしい番組だから、ぜひ見てください。